What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today we are going to do something with the V6 that came out of the new Magnum. As you guys saw in the last video, it looked like the engine has been rebuilt. I'm not sure who rebuilt it. I'm not sure if it's rebuilt. It just looked like it had a lot of new parts. So what I'm going to do in this video is pull the transmission off of the engine, get everything stripped, then go through the engine and figure out if the engine is good, if the engine is bad. This time I'm going to be a lot more careful pulling the engine apart. In the last video that I did with one of these engines, I ran it with no oil, so I really didn't care. I was just trying to get to the inside of the engine to see what happened when we ran it without oil. The Magnum 2.7 V6 is now disassembled. The top end is disassembled. So I was very surprised that this thing is as clean as it is. Everything is freshly machined. The heads were just decked. The heads were just redone. It looks like the cylinder walls were honed. Everything looks brand new. The one issue I did see when I was pulling the heads apart, and I'm now going to pull the bottom end apart, is whoever assembled the engine, or at least the top end, used axle grease instead of assembly lube. So the issue with using axle grease is that it doesn't dissolve with oil. And the problem with that is that if you use that in cam journals or anything, it's never going to get pushed out. You're never going to get correct oil flow across your bearings, across your cam journals, through your lifters, anything like that. So I'm going to clean all that stuff. The heads actually have to go to the machine shop because whoever timed this engine timed it wrong. And these are interference engines, which means that every single intake valve on these heads is bent. So I'm going to take them to the machine shop tomorrow, have them redo all the intake valves, have them check all the exhaust valves. The pistons are now out of the engine and everything looks extremely clean. The crankshaft looks like it was just freshened up. It has brand new bearings. Everything is good to go. The wrist pins, whoever put this engine together, they probably didn't measure the wrist pins because those shouldn't be standing up on their own like that. So I'm gonna have to go back and just kind of adjust the wrist pins so they float a little bit better, because if they don't float, they're going to wear the cylinder wall out a little bit more. They will wear in eventually, but I'd rather just fix the problem now instead of having an issue later down the road, even though it's not going to be my issue, but whoever I sell the engine to, I don't want them to have an issue. So other than that, the crankshaft looks like it was just machined. Everything looks really, really nice. New oil pump, new water pump. I'll have to get a new water pump gasket because when I pulled it off, somebody used RTV and yeah, it's an aluminum gasket. So get a new gasket, put the water pump on. Obviously you want to not reuse a water pump gasket when the water pump is inside the engine, because if it leaks, it mixes with the oil, then it blows the engine up. Have the heads and pistons loaded in the truck, so everything is now good to go. I'm going to take all this stuff over to the machine shop, have him check. I was gonna do the wrist pins myself, but I'll just have him do the wrist pins and have him do the valves and valve seats again, and or the valves and valve seats, because I'm not the one that timed it wrong and bent them. But the get all this stuff done. Hopefully I have it by Friday. So just plasti gauged the main caps and pulled them back off. As you can see, this is kind of a chart of what the plasti gauge, the width of it, what the clearance is going to be. And down here, it looks like it's a little bit wider than the 0.051, so that's perfect, exactly what we want it to be. So what I'm going to do now is put all these back on, and it took me a long time to find the torque specs, and they're kind of strange. So I'll kind of go over them. The inners are, and don't quote me on these because what I found was off of Mitchell, but they just seem really light. So the inners are 15 foot-pounds, and then they are a quarter turn or 90 degrees. The outers are 20 foot-pounds and a quarter turn, and the side bolts are as well 20 foot-pounds. Just finished getting the 2.7 Magnum engine in time, and now I know exactly why the people that were trying to time me before bent the valve. So they were relying solely on the paint marks on the new timing chain. This is a bad practice. Sometimes these chains are painted in the wrong positions and it gets you in a lot of trouble. In their case, they bent every intake valve on this engine. So what I usually do is I set the bottom end to top dead center. On these, there is a mark. So right there is the mark, and you just line it up with that arrow on the oil pump. Then on the top, if you pull the heads, you're gonna have to reset the camshafts. They're pretty easy to set, but there are dots. So you just set those at the very top on both of them, on both heads. And then this one, you're pretty much making sure that these are up, but you wanna make sure that those are lined up as well. So these need to stay pretty much in the center. The engine is now back together. One tip with these engines, probably why a lot of people have leaking issues, is you have to align the front cover, the rear cover, and the oil pan. If they're not aligned, they will leak. So how you do that is you kind of loosely bolt the back cover, the oil pan, and then the front cover, and then you just start to tighten it all up very loosely and just kind of go. As you go, you tighten it a little bit more until everything is sucked up nice and tight. You want to make sure the oil pan is flush with the block surface, and then on the back side, the oil pan is covering the rear main seal cover, and you want that rear main seal cover to suck all the way down before you bolt it on as well. So it is kind of a pain. I was using the torque wrench. I torqued all the oil pan bolts to 30 foot-pounds. I didn't really look what they were. Usually I don't torque oil pan bolts because it really doesn't matter, but they were the same as all the other stuff, so just 30 foot-pounds seemed like a good idea. But all these bolts are now tightened, everything is good to go. And also I had, you can see the assembly lube on the camshafts. It's all nice and lubed up. I poured oil on the timing chains, so it just kind of ran down the guides, spun the engine over a couple times. Really all I need to do now is throw the valve covers on and the intake manifold, and this thing is ready to go. So instead of just trashing this engine and just throwing it away, it's something I could have done. But now I took an engine out of a car that was pretty much free in the first place. And, you know, this engine will probably bring $1,500 to $2,000. They're pretty expensive. The ones that have like 70,000 to like 120,000 miles are listed for like $2,000. So should be able to get a decent amount out of this engine. Now it's all rebuilt, it has brand new head gaskets, bearings, everything was measured, spins over very nice. And we got that wrist pin situation all taken care of, which was really nice. But I'm gonna end the video here. Glad this engine's back together. It was just a, you know, it was just a little side project. I didn't want to throw it away. It was worth fixing. But if you like these videos, make sure to click the subscribe button, thumbs up, throw a comment below. See you guys next time.